Welcome back to MacStories Unwind. We are back in the new year, 2022. How are you doing, Federico Vitici?
I am doing fantastic. It is good to be back.
It is very good to be back and doing our kind of regular schedule. It was nice to have a break as well. We both watched, I think, a fair amount of TV, some movies, caught up on a lot of content and media across all kinds of genres over the holidays. And, we enjoyed doing those special episodes at the end of 2021 where we covered, our favorite albums and our favorite movies and TV shows and video games. We enjoyed that so much that I think we're gonna kind of run with that and change the focus. Change the focus a little bit of how we do this show. But it's the same show. It's just gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah, I feel like this is like a natural evolution of Unwind. So the way that I see it is basically more media, more unwinding
Yes.
is what we're saying here. Because, we realized over the holidays that we really liked doing those media-focused episodes. And I feel like Unwind has been moving toward this place for quite some time. Because, we do so many shows that are focused on what we do at MacStories, what we do at App Stories and the club, and there's still going to be a small recap in the middle on Unwind, but I feel like it's the natural evolution of this show is to talk more about media, because it has become such an important part of what we do. Even when you consider the Club MacStories Discord and the AV Club community there. So the AV Club channel, where we as a community, we talk about TV, we talk about video games, movies, books. And of course, there are dedicated channels for those as well. So you can swing by the video games channel, for example, and there's always people talking about video games. And so I feel like media has become such an important part of MacStories and the club and the community around it that it only makes sense for Unwind to follow and put the spotlight less on recapping the news and more on talking about media, talking about TV, movies, games, books, music, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a great idea, and media has become a bigger and bigger part of the technology world in general as well.
Oh, yeah.
And, Apple included. And as you said, we'll hit some highlights from MacStories in the middle, but we are going to focus on our media picks. So why don't we get started? And I'll let you go first, Federico. What have you been enjoying?
So, much to my surprise, my first pick of 2022 is going to be an HBO Max TV show. Now, I gotta say, so broadly speaking, I really like HBO Max. So this is not something that I thought I was gonna say.
No, it's quite good. We've watched it quite a bit at our house.
I actually feel like it is what's the American expression? The best bang for my buck? Is that the expression?
Yeah, that is.
It's
It's up there with Netflix, I'd say. I mean, we watch a lot of Netflix in our house too, but HBO Max, I think, is a close second.
And we do as well. But I gotta tell you, I've been catching up on all the Matrix movies myself. I caught up 20 years later on the entire run of Sex and the City on HBO Max.
Okay.
Hey, look at me. I'm the guy who just got up on 6 seasons of Sex and the City.
Did you at least watch the new one too?
Hey, man, come on. Do you even know me? Of course. And I'm all caught up on And Just Like That, which is the sequel to Sex and the City. And I don't know. I actually like HBO Max's offerings. And there's a couple of other things that we would like to watch. The movie offerings are great. I really like it. I use it with the VPN. So unfortunately, the process is a bit involved. Whenever we want to watch HBO Max on Apple TV, we cannot use it on the Apple TV itself because you cannot use a VPN app on the Apple TV like you can on an iPhone. So what I do, and here's a quick sort of teacher tip, if you will, I have HBO Max on my iPhone. I start a VPN on my iPhone. HBO Max is US only. This is all why this is necessary. I signed up for HBO Max with my US App Store account. When I want to watch something on HBO Max, I open the VPN, switch to any American location, start the TV show or movie in the HBO Max app on my iPhone, and then I can just AirPlay it to my Apple TV, and it works. So,
Nice.
yeah. Anyway, my first pick is the new sort of the reboot of Gossip Girl. Now, this may not come as a surprise because I'm a huge fan of the original Gossip Girl, which was a CW series, I want to say.
I think that's
from
right.
back in the day. One of the last truly great teen dramas, I believe, right up there with the OC. And like the original Gossip Girl, of course, if you're not familiar, was based on, so here's the premise of Gossip Girl. It's about the tagline is it's about the scandalous lives of Manhattan's elite. So it's used to be a TV show that followed the lives of these rich kids at this private school in New York. This private school called Constance. Actually, Constance was the private school for girls, and St. Jude was the same school, but sort of the division for the boys, because they had this gender-based division. So Constance and St. Jude. And Gossip Girl in the original series was this blog. So this is pre-social media, right? The original Gossip Girl from 2006, 2007, I believe. Pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram. It's a blog that posts gossip about this group of friends, this group of rich friends that everybody in the Upper East Side of New York knows and is familiar with. Now, spoilers for the original Gossip Girl, I guess. If you never watched, just pause and skip ahead a couple of minutes. Gossip Girl in the original TV show is actually a guy, one of the main protagonists of the series, named Dan Humphrey. Dan is a novelist who's sort of like the underdog, sort of like the outsider, who somehow finds and sort of works his way into this group of much richer people than he is. And he starts this blog, Gossip Girl, that becomes an institution amongst this group of people. And in the very last few episodes, it is revealed that Gossip Girl is actually a guy. And it's this guy who's been writing a book about these people.
Wow,
Anyway.
you've just totally spoiled the entire thing for me because Jennifer has watched this series, but I have not.
Hey, look, you should have muted me or something.
I know. I'm like 15 years behind the times.
You were never going to watch it. You were never going to watch. And look, even if you know, it's still quite enjoyable to watch it again.
Okay.
Sylvia and I, we watched the original Gossip Girl again in lockdown last year. Well, 2 years ago. We are in 2022.
Yes.
And it was still enjoyable because you can pick up the sort of the breadcrumbs of the little hints that the authors were dropping as to Gossip Girl's identity. Anyway, so HBO Max, they did a reboot of Gossip Girl. And here's why I like it. I was very skeptical about it at first because it's not a sequel to Gossip Girl. It's set in the same universe, same school, same city, of course, in New York. But there are so far, and we are all caught up. Well, we are halfway through. We are on episode 7 out of 10 or 12, I believe. We're going to be done pretty soon. It's in the same universe, but there are none of the original cast is participating in the reboot. So far, there are only references to the original Gossip Girl website and the people. Like the people from Gossip Girl are they exist in the universe of this TV show. They are referenced. They are talked about. They are shown with photographs, but the actual characters, they are not part of the reboot. Here's the gimmick behind the new Gossip Girl. Gossip Girl, as you know, the original blog has been gone for like a decade. The website is dead, but the private schools, they still exist, and of course, social media is now a thing. And all these kids, they are now obsessed with Instagram. So what used to be known as like a fashionista is now an influencer on Instagram,
Right.
and so forth. So And here's how this new Gossip Girl is in direct opposition to the original one. It flips the mechanic for the TV show on its head. So in the original Gossip Girl, you spend the entire run of the show without knowing who Gossip Girl is. In the new one, none of the new kids are familiar with Gossip Girl. They just know it used to be like a blog or something, but they don't really know it. Instead, you get to know right away who Gossip Girl is. So they tell you right away who starts up the new Gossip Girl. Specifically, it's this group of teachers at the private school who get treated so badly by these kids and their parents that they decide to try and take revenge on these kids, basically by exposing all their lies and all their private lives. So it's these frustrated teachers who one day think, we got to do something. These kids, they don't respect us. Their parents, they don't respect us. There must be something we can do. One of them is like, hey guys, remember that old blog, that Gossip Girl thing? What if we try it again? And so the new Gossip Girl, starts up again, created by these teachers as an Instagram account. So, and it's a very fun sort of flipping the original thing on its head, sort of different mechanic that I really like. And it's in direct opposition to the first one, where the first one, everybody knows what Gossip Girl is, but you do not know who is behind it. In the new one, none of the kids know what Gossip Girl is. You get to know immediately who is behind it. And as the show progresses, the kids are like, what's this account? What does he want from us? Like some of the kids in the first episode, they block Gossip Girl on Instagram. They're like, this must be some troll. But then eventually they start paying attention to it. And so that is intriguing right away. As for the characters, so it's a new storyline. I would say it's based on the story of these two half sisters. One of them, Julianne, she's the sort of the influencer at this private school. Everybody pays attention to her. She's got a huge following on Instagram. She cuts deals with all these brands. But her half sister, so they have the same mother who died in childbirth for the younger, in giving birth to the younger sister. She moves from Buffalo to New York, to the same private school. And so you got the circle of friends, all the friends of Julianne, they need to accept Zoya, is the younger sister who moves to New York. And basically drama ensues from there. So there's,
Sure.
relationships, gossip, and Instagram has such a huge, plays such a huge role in this one. Now, here's why I like it. I was concerned that like in And Just Like That, which is the reboot on HBO Max for Sex and the City, I was concerned that the folks at HBO Max, they would go a little too hard in the direction of, this needs to be a politically correct TV show that checks all the boxes for sort of like, what are the topics that we need to incorporate in a modern, politically correct TV show. There are people of color, and there's politics being discussed, and there's gender identity being discussed. The thing is, And Just Like That does not do a good job with that. And you can really tell, the authors of this TV show, they are trying too hard to be hip and, up with the times. In Gossip Girl, I think they're doing a really good job so far. And I really appreciate it, how they have a more diverse cast. Because it's one of the things that, in watching Gossip Girl again, like the original one today, it's a bunch of white people doing white people things, right? And you can really tell.
Sure.
It's a different show from a different era. This one, much more diverse, right? Much more diverse cast. Sexual identity being discussed. Gender being discussed. Discrimination between different social classes being discussed. Gentrification. of some of the New York boroughs is also a topic. Like they do an actually really good job at talking about these topics in a modern way that resonates with young people. And that I really like. It's the same Gossip Girl, same drama, but it's a modern TV show. And they're doing a really good job at that. So, and of course, there's all the scandals and, Spotted, which is one of the original taglines of Gossip Girl. It captured me. I'm really liking it. And don't be skeptical. Like, this is not the sort of reboot that is like, oh, you took an old format and you're trying to make it young, but you really don't know what you're supposed to do. These folks on the Gossip Girl reboot, they know the source material, and the new version is in line with what you expect, but is also a modern thing that stands on its own.
Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, it sounds like they do. It comes naturally just because of the way they've produced it, as opposed to feeling forced. Which I think that's the best way kind of reboot you can get. Right? You don't really want the old show with modern actors in it. What you want is a show that fits with today's society, but with some of the same themes and narrative elements, I suppose, right?
That's a great way to put it, that it feels forced in for example, in the Sex and the City reboot, like, yeah, you really wanted to have a black character here, but you're not going in depth on any of the motivations or the backstory of this character.
Right,
like
it's just superficial.
It just feels like the token black character, for example. In the Sex and it's very superficial in the Sex and the City reboot. Whereas in Gossip Girl, I think they're doing a much better job at, okay, here's why you should care about these characters. Here's their story. Here's their motivations. So yeah, really good job. Soundtrack, I appreciate. Lots of Phoebe Bridgers, John, which is something
I better watch
like
then.
Here. And Julian Baker as well. And the Bleachers.
Oh, I like Julian Baker too.
All the bands that you like. So before we move on to your pick, why don't we do a quick recap of MacStories? What's going on the site this week?
Well, let's do that. This week you had a great story, which was your update of the frame shortcut, which is the shortcut that you create that allows screenshots to be put in frames of Apple hardware, whether it's a watch or a Mac or an iPhone or an iPad. And with this edition, you added MacBook Pro 14 and 16-inch support, as well as the Apple Watch, the 45 millimeter version, because for some reason Apple has not created frames for the 41 millimeter version, and a couple more localizations, both Chinese and Czech. And it's people seem to be pretty happy about this. I'm really glad to see that the MacBook Pro is there. That was fun to have on the site this week.
Yeah, to all both versions of the MacBook Pro, and there were some bugs that I needed to resolve. So if you downloaded Frames 2.1 right after I posted it on MacStories a few days ago, make sure to go to the same article and download it again, because there's an updated version with a few more fixes.
It was a really big week for shortcuts on the site, which I suppose that's true most weeks, but particularly this week, because you also did a story about a shortcut that you call WordleBot, which is a way to make the scores from the popular web app game Wordle more accessible and give you more context about the score, because that game uses emoji when you share your score that isn't very accessible on things like Twitter or Instagram or wherever you might post those. But you've created a shortcut that looks really simple, but it does a lot of complicated text splitting and regex and things like that under the hood, and then recombines it all. So you get the same kind of grid with the emoji, but it also has text labels for each row, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's the same aesthetic, same layout, same emoji grid, but there's also text, so that if you have any issue with being able to visually parse that block of emoji, there's also text descriptions for each line. It was a fun thing to put together.
Yeah, it really is a handy thing to have for sharing your scores. And then I had a short story this week about Alfred, which now has shortcut support, and it's done through a workflow. One of the things about Alfred is that you can build third-party workflows, and it includes universal actions, which are ways to do things with either text links or files or images. And so what this workflow does, it allows you to do as you would with any app, type SC for shortcut, and then choose from your shortcuts. You can also navigate by folders, and you can pass in text, you can pass in URLs, and you can pass in files and images. So really handy and fast. I've been using it, and it's been really great. The other two things we should mention really quickly, Federico, before we move on, are both App Stories 255. I can't believe we're already at episode 255, but we published that on Monday. And this is our return from the holiday break with App Stories. So we wanted to get back to our Obsidian series, which we started before the holidays. And we talked about third-party plugins. And there are so many great third-party plugins that we are splitting that up into 2 episodes. We covered roughly half to 2/3 this week, and we're going to have another set of them next week. But listen to that, because we've got maybe 15 or so plugins that we cover in that. And then finally, in the club, you did a story about data view and how you're using that. And I covered a bunch of Mac utilities, and we've got a load of app debuts because we've been off for a few weeks and the apps have been building up. So we've got a long list of things in the club this week for that. All right, Federico, I want to lay my pick on you. And this is Hawkeye, the TV show on Disney Plus. This is part of the Marvel universe. And I wouldn't say that I'm a diehard Marvel person, but I really do enjoy. I have seen, I think, most of the movies, if not all the movies, and most of the TV shows at this point that have been on Disney Plus. And I think this is probably, it's one of my favorite on Disney Plus. Disney Plus has been doing a really good job with Marvel. I mean, WandaVision was great. I thought Loki was almost as good, not quite. And I put Hawkeye right up with it because what's interesting about this, it gives you a little break, I guess, from superpowers, and that Hawkeye is just kind of a guy with a bow and arrow who's really good at doing that. He has a lot of trick arrows, a lot of high-tech arrows and things. But this is not so much about superheroes with superpowers. It's about Clint Barton, who is Hawkeye, and about Kate Bishop. Kate Bishop becomes Hawkeye's partner in this show, and it's Kate Bishop is played by Haley Steinfeld, and she, the backstory here is that when the Avengers saved New York from an invasion from space, she was in a building in New York City and saw Hawkeye going at these space aliens with nothing but a bow and arrow, which inspired her to take up the bow and arrow herself and want to become a superhero just like Clint Barton. And that's kind of a neat background, but what happens during this first season is that there's a murder and there's a mysterious underworld crime organization that Kate Bishop gets mixed up in right away. And Clinton Barton, Hawkeye, happens to be in town too, and finds himself thrown in with her, trying to keep her from getting herself killed because she's like a college student who is really good with a bow and arrow, but hasn't really had any experience fighting crime and these kind of things. So it's a really interesting relationship between the two of them, and him trying to protect her and then ultimately being very impressed with her and her skills. And I guess what I like too is that you don't really necessarily need to have a deep understanding of the storylines in the Marvel universe to watch the show. I mean, it helps. There's no doubt that there are references to Black Widow and some of the things that had happened in the past, but it really is kind of more of an action mystery type of show that I think is a good place to start if you're kind of new to some of this stuff. I think you would actually like this quite a bit, Federico. It's a neat story, and it's not a huge commitment either because there's only 8 episodes. And what I like about that though is that it really left me feeling like I wanted more at the end, and the timing was good too because it takes place in the run up to Christmas, and it finished right before Christmas time, right? And so it was kind of fun to see scenes of New York City at Christmas time when you're kind of stuck at home. A lot of people have been stuck at home, not traveling over the holidays. It was nice to see scenes of Rockefeller Center and things going on in New York at the holidays. And it draws from a run of the comic book from, I know that this was one of my picks for our favorite TV shows of the year, but I didn't get to talk about it enough then, which is why it's my pick today. But the comic books ran in, I think, like started around 2015, I want to say, to 2018 maybe. And a lot of the elements of the story are pulled from those directly, but there are new things too. I've recommended the comic books in the past. Definitely worth checking out. Even some of the artwork style is incorporated into the TV series, both in the opening credits and the closing credits, which is nice. They really lean into that, which I think is smart because it's such a good series. And I'll put a couple of links in the show notes too, because there's a story here that I saw in Polygon that has a nice explanation about who Kate Bishop is and how she's touches so many different elements of the Marvel universe and is involved in so many different storylines, either directly or tangentially. So that's kind of an interesting story if you want to learn more, as well as Polygon did a great review of the series as well. So those are good places to look if you want to learn more about it. And of course, the comic books are great too if you want to pick those up too.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. You can go to Club MacStories, and if you join Club MacStories Plus or Premier, you can be part of our Discord, where we've got an AV club where we talk all about media with our members on a regular basis and do live town halls with member participation as well. We've got all kinds of channels over there for video games, TV and movies, music, all sorts of things. It's kind of an extension of MacStories Unwind in a lot of ways. Again, that's MacStories.net for both of us. You can find Federico on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.